The New York Mets, they won their first series of the year. The team took 2 out of 3 from the Reds this weekend in the Natty. On Sunday, New York recorded a 3-1 victory to improve to 3-6 on the season. So let's talk some Mets baseball with the executive producer of New York Post Sports Podcast, the podfather himself, my guy Jake Brown. Jake, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about Francisco Lindor today. If it does look like I got in a fight with the Lindor haters if you're looking at me right now, and that's because I did. They laid the first punch, but like Lindor did on Sunday, I got the last laugh.
I'm glad you got the last laugh. And we know this. Lindor typically has gotten off to slow starts in his Mets career early on in the season. So, Jake, let's start Sunday with Francisco Lindor, where he finally had a really good game at the plate. 2 hits, had a double and a homer. How encouraged were you seeing Lindor's performance on Sunday? And do you think that this performance will allow him to break out of his early season slump?
Yeah, the Mets sure hope so, because 1 for 31 is terrible. It is not good. I'll say this, though. The lowlifes that come at his family, his wife, in his DMs, in her DMs with death threats, it's got to stop. These are human beings, and it's utterly ridiculous to come at a player because, your bet didn't hit or because he didn't, help win the game. It's less than 5% into the season. The Mets are 3-6. This was 8 games in, and now he broke out of it. 8 out of 162, a guy who plays essentially all 162. So, I hate to see that. He obviously saw it. His wife saw it. It was out there, I'm sure, and I really hope that, the majority of the Mets fans who don't do this will give him a nice ovation when the Mets return home on Friday. But they needed it because they are not scoring enough. They're pitching great, but they're not scoring enough. So they definitely need Lindor's timely hits, and they'll need him to keep it going. This is just one game, but it's a good sign, and I think that's exactly what he needed because he looked like he was forcing it a bit and trying to get hits, and, he looked a lot smoother at the plate on Sunday.
Now, he definitely did, and props to you for calling out the people with those vile threats that are absolutely disgusting. There's no place for that in sports fandom at all, and we'll see if Francisco Lindor can continue his good hitting this week. Let's talk about the pitching, because Shawn Manaea, he got his first win of the season. He was solid on the mound on Sunday, a day after the Mets bullpen got whacked. What do you want to see more of from Manaea to become a consistent pitcher in this starting rotation?
Well, what I like about Manaea is he's really good mixing his pitches. He's a smart pitcher. He'll throw the fastball 93, 94, and then he'll get you with the slider. It's hard to complain about anything he's done. Listen, the guy's pitched 11 innings. He's given up, a couple of hits, 4 hits, a run, 6. I mean, he's just been remarkable. The one thing he can maybe change is he's getting deep in accounts a lot. He's walked 2 guys in each start. He needs to, punch guys out a little bit sooner so he can go deeper into games. Like I said last week with you, they can't have these 5 innings. They got to get guys 6, and God forbid you get a 7th inning from a starting pitcher. That's the one thing they need to this bullpen, which is going 15 games in 14 days here. Doesn't get taxed like we saw on Saturday. That was a big reason they lost Saturday, because Yohan Ramirez had to wear it, and he got rocked in one of the an inning that the Bad News Bears are laughing at. The Bad News Bears haven't seen an inning that happened to the Mets on Saturday in the 8th inning where it all imploded. So outside of one inning, the Mets nearly sweep the Reds. And, after that win with the comeback in the bottom of the 9th, the Alonso homer and Tyrone Taylor, it's great to see. And Manaea, it's looking like a great contract that the Mets got him at. $10 million a year less than what they would have had to pay Jordan Montgomery, and not even including the luxury tax. So Manaea, get a little deeper into games, get guys out earlier. But so far, he's been great.
So far, so good with Manaea, and it needs more innings that can help the bullpen. And speaking of the bullpen, you talked about how bad the bullpen was on Saturday. They were solid on Sunday. 3 scoreless innings in relief. Edwin Diaz picks up his 2nd save of the season on Sunday, and both saves for him coming this weekend against the Reds. What's your evaluation of how Diaz has looked thus far this season?
I mean, he's been electric, and it's so great to see him out there. The one run that was unearned he gave up, he made an error himself. and things got a little wonky, hit by pitch, walks. Like when he's in control, he looks unhittable. He goes from the filthy 98-mile-an-hour heat to the 98-mile-an-hour slider that goes in on a left-hander. And you just love to watch it. It's something that the Mets were missing so badly last season, and it's so fun to have him back. It's great to have him do it twice in 1 weekend against his brother. They had the friendly family bet where he would pay for a big family dinner, whoever has less saves. So that was cool to see. Edwin Diaz is a pleasure to watch. And, the one thing I'm a little discouraged by is Mendoza's use of the bullpen. I think he's got to realize a Brooks Raley's got to go more than 3 pitches on the second day of a back-to-back, and then you can't use him on the next day. He's got to have some of these guys go a little bit longer in this stretch where you don't have days off so you can avoid a situation like what happened on Saturday. So I think the bullpen needs to be managed a little bit better. But I like not doing, in April, guys 3 days in a row. But you got to have guys go more than 3 pitches. But Edwin Diaz, been the star of the show and an absolute game changer. And you see why the Mets were so pissed off that he got hurt and they missed him last year. He's back and as good as he's ever been.
Yeah, Mets definitely missed him last year, and you're right about that. Don't want to see the bullpen get taxed. And I misspoke there. The bullpen today, obviously Diaz gave up a run, but it was unearned. So no earned runs surrendered by the bullpen on Sunday against the Reds. Jake, next up for the Mets. 4-game series down in the ATL against the Braves. What are you going to be keeping your eye on in the Mets' first matchup this season with the defending NL East champs?
Well, the Braves made a mockery of the Mets last season. 10-3, absolutely dominated this Mets team. And so far this season, the Mets went Brewers, Tigers, Reds. 2 middle-of-the-pack, maybe even below middle-of-the-pack teams. Now it's their first test against a championship contender in their division, and you don't really look at the standings. They're 3-6, Braves are 6-2. You're not like, oh, if you win 3 out of 4, you gain ground. That's not what you're looking at. But you got to see this team be able to compete and stick it to the Braves early and send a message that, hey, we're not going to go 3-10 against you guys this season. And it starts with an old friend, a guy who pitched 9 years in Atlanta, made a name for himself in Atlanta in Julio Teheran, and made 2 all-star appearances. So you got to think he's got a chip on his shoulder going back to the place that made him the career that he's had and saying, hey, I want to stick it to them. So I'm watching for Teheran on Monday. Mets gave him a 1-year, $2.5 million deal, so it wasn't really chump change for a guy who might only make a few spot starts. I want to see if he's got anything left in the tank. He's not 38. He's like 33. So he still has some years, I think, left to give to a club, and hopefully it's the Mets early on. And I want to see the starting pitching continue to be great. Get into the 6th inning. Like I said, Hauser, 5 innings a run. Manaea was great. Even Jose Budo, 6 innings and a run. They've been giving up Quintana 1 run through 5 2/3 and a win on Friday. The starting pitching has been good. Now go deep, and the middle relief continue to be good. The Mets' big 4 have been great, but I want to see it from the likes of Yohan Ramirez and see it from those, Jake Diekmans. I want to see them perform at the levels that we've seen as the high leverage guys. And I think the Mets have a shot to, Max Fried got crushed in Colorado. They'll face him Thursday. So they'll face Morton, who sometimes gives them fits, but they're not facing a murderer's row rotation here in the Braves. And I'd love to see the Mets at least split, going down in Atlanta, and then get JD Martinez when the Mets return home for Doc Gooden weekend, I'll call it, next weekend against the Royals. See J.D. Martinez make his home debut for a team that comes off a either split or series win in Atlanta. That's what you want to see in this series.
All right, there you go. At least won a series split down in the ATL. We'll see what the Mets can do there. That is Jake Brown, the executive producer of New York Post Sports Podcast. Check him out there. Jake, love talking some Mets baseball with you, and don't fight with the fans too much on social media, okay?
All right. As long as I'm still here next week and this eclipse doesn't get the best of me, I'll see you next time.
Hey, look, man, we survived an earthquake. I think we can survive an eclipse tomorrow. And, maybe the Mets can survive the series down in Atlanta. We'll see how that goes. Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me.